The merger will affect thousands of workers in Britain, and union leaders are calling for urgent talks about possible job losses. Our defence correspondent Kevin Dunn reports.
Shaking hands on an £8 billion deal, the bosses of British Aerospace and GEC agreeing a merger which had been on and off for years. British Aerospace, maker of the new Eurofighter and a partner in Airbus, has long been in the forefront of British manufacturing. But it specialises in hardware, the so-called weapons platforms. What GEC's Marconi brings to the new company is specialised software technology, highly sophisticated electronics know-how.
Well, it makes the new British Aerospace, the third largest aerospace and defence company in the world, slightly larger than Raytheon, slightly smaller in sales terms than Lockheed Martin, but right up there in terms of a world-scale business that's going to be a real global competitor.
The merger will mean some job losses, but union reaction was by and large positive.
First of all, we're very pleased about the linking of these two major high-tech British companies and the fact that this will give them real strength in terms of the ongoing restructuring of the European aerospace and electronics industry, but naturally concerned that there could be a potential for job losses arising out of this merger.
The merger does not preclude further deals with European partners, with whom both companies have been talking about creating a European aerospace giant. The merger will create a British defence supergroup capable of competing with the American giants of the defence industry, who have themselves been consolidating for years. It may well have been a case, as one cabinet minister warned last year, of consolidate or die. Kevin Dunn, ITN, The City.
And we're going to take a short break now.
Still to come on the programme, the rest of the day's news include today to try to persuade him to honour the ceasefire. There's still considerable anger over Belgrade's decision to expel the man in charge of monitoring that ceasefire. Our foreign news correspondent Paul Davis reports.
William Walker, the American who heads the team of international monitors, was still in Belgrade this morning, despite yesterday's ultimatum from the Yugoslav government giving him 48 hours to leave the country. Jesus Christ. Mr. Walker's sin, it seems, was to openly express his horror at the slaughter of ethnic Albanians in Kosovo at the weekend, and to condemn the Serbian security forces he believes to be responsible. His expulsion has been condemned by the UN Security Council, although Yugoslavia's ambassador claims Mr. Walker has lost his objectivity.
Before we pass final judgment, we should investigate this on the spot, and we should do it jointly and not one-sidedly as Mr. Walker has done it, and glamorously spread the falsehood all around the world, which is the cowboy policy, which is not what we expected from the head of the verification commission.
The expulsion of the chief monitor, coupled with the continuing offensive by Serbian forces around the village of Račak, once again has the major powers issuing warnings to President Slobodan Milosevic.
These kinds of atrocities are unacceptable. The monitoring group there, headed by Ambassador Walker, is a very important part of the agreement that Milosevic made with Ambassador Holbrooke.
Today, NATO generals will meet President Milosevic and remind him that the authorization for airstrikes against his forces agreed last October is still in place, and that events in Kosovo this past few days are openly inviting international intervention. Paul Davis, ITN.
Tony Blair today told teachers they will get more pay, but school standards will have to improve as well. The Prime Minister said it had to be a something-for-something deal when he addressed head teachers on performance-related pay. Our political correspondent Lauren Taylor reports.
The Prime Minister was back in the classroom this morning at the start of the process of consulting teachers over radical changes to their pay. Teachers from around Essex had a chance to question the Prime Minister on performance-related pay. The government wants salaries to be determined by appraisal and in part by children's exam results. One was worried that the new pay scale would be divisive.
And perhaps almost 50% of us will feel labelled as second-class teachers.
If we're going to pay teachers more and give a significant uplift in pay, I think people are going to expect that to be tied to high standards of performance. And I think what we've found is that particularly younger people coming into the profession do actually recognise and welcome that.
This is just one in a series of roadshows that the government is planning during the consultation period. But already one of the big teaching unions is sceptical. It's worried that the Prime Minister's aim is not to listen to teachers, but to persuade them that his views are right.
We are so fed up with so many impositions which have been put upon us for the last 20 years. That frankly, if Blair thinks he can come along and succeed where the Tories failed and impose his own ideas upon us without responding genuinely to the consultative process, then I think he's making a very big mistake indeed.
But if some unions are sceptical about how performance-related pay will work, some of the young teachers here today seemed happy with the idea.
I don't think that good teachers have got much to fear from this, and hopefully the appraisal system will be such as to allow decent teachers to be rewarded.
Today, the Prime Minister promised he would listen to the views of teachers, but insisted change is necessary to modernise the profession. Lauren Taylor, ITN.
Sport and the boss of the Five Nations Championship said today he was left by pigeons and gulls. Environmentalists say that overfeeding the feathered friends has made them fat and lazy. Howell Jones reports from Lancashire.
Fat and fertile, pigeons have left their mark on Britain's buildings, and cleaning up after them costs an estimated £10 million a year. The Tidy Britain group has an answer for these ledge potatoes: starve them into submission.
The single best thing for us to do is to stop feeding them. I mean, there is a sense in which the birds are becoming dependent upon humans giving them food, and the numbers are increasing all the time in the urban areas simply because we feed them.
It seems there are very few crumbs of comfort for the pigeon population.
Don't like them. Get rid of them.
All the germs and everything on them. Oh, I hate them.
But in a nation of lazy pigeons, there are some exceptions. Forget the birds you see around town. This one's more like Sebastian Coe. This is the loft of champions in the Lancashire town of Oswaldtwistle. These highly bred racers could be forgiven for looking down on their scavenging cousins, but their trainer says street pigeons have a place too.
A lot of people get pleasure from feeding town birds, streeters, so you will be taking that pleasure away from those people. I think there's too many. They could do with being reduced, but I think that a few will be okay, keep people interested.
And when all the arguments about money and health risks are over, many would still say they're as much a part of the British landscape as the buildings they perch on. Howell Jones, ITN, Lancashire.
And that's all for now. John Sush